All right, so get ready because we've got a lot to cover today. We're diving deep into the world of Al Pacino
Oh, yeah.
with excerpts from his memoir. It's like we're getting a sneak peek into the mind of a legend.
Definitely. A rare opportunity to hear his perspective on his career and his life in his own words.
Right. And today we're going to unpack his journey, those early days to his thoughts on some of his most iconic roles.
And, of course, his relationship with Shakespeare,
Can't forget that.
a constant thread throughout his career.
What really struck me as I was going through these excerpts, it's like Pacino's story kind of flips the script on some of those classic Hollywood success narratives.
You're absolutely right. Like, we always hear about the Oscar win being this life-altering event, like it changes everything.
Right.
But Pacino's pretty matter-of-fact about it.
Yeah.
He says it didn't drastically change his career trajectory.
Which is fascinating because
He was already being offered major roles before the Oscar.
Yeah.
And he kind of stayed true to this process of, like, carefully selecting projects that resonated with him.
It seems like he was driven by this pursuit of artistic excellence.
More than just chasing accolades.
Right, and it's reflected in his choices.
Yeah.
Even when he's revisiting, like, familiar territory.
Exactly. You included those excerpts about Carlito's Way.
Yeah.
Which was this interesting reunion with some of the team from Scarface.
Yeah, Marty Bregman and Brian De Palma.
Exactly. Producer and director of Scarface.
You could almost call it a mini reunion.
Right. But what I found really interesting was Pacino's emphasis on making Carlito's Way a distinctly different film.
Okay.
Carlito Brigante is like the antithesis of Tony Montana from Scarface.
Oh, interesting.
He's measured, he's controlled, almost stoic, and ultimately his downfall is triggered by this act of misplaced mercy.
Wow. That's so different from the reckless ambition of Tony Montana.
It is. And it makes you wonder if Pacino was consciously trying to avoid being pigeonholed, even after becoming so well known for those intense, larger-than-life gangster roles.
It's certainly a possibility.
And it's worth noting that Carlito's Way actually marked the end of his 5-film collaboration with Marty Bregman.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Their parting seemed amicable, from what I read.
Very amicable. Pacino even mentions Bregman's kind of humorous understanding of his on-screen persona.
He does. He quotes him as saying, "Want a successful film, put Pacino on the poster with a gun."
It's almost self-aware, right?
Totally. Like they both recognize how the industry perceived him.
Exactly. But throughout the memoir, Pacino is very clear that he never saw himself as just a gangster actor.
Even if those roles brought him immense fame.
Precisely. Which brings us to Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
And in this film, it seems like Pacino really wanted to delve into a different kind of gangster.
Totally. Someone unlike any he had played before.
Right. He talks about being drawn to the character of Lefty Ruchero.
Yeah.
Who's this lower-ranking mobster with a certain melancholy.
Yeah.
Like a deep sadness that Pacino really wanted to explore. Do you think his choice to play Lefty reflected a desire to move away from those stereotypical gangster roles? Or was it something deeper?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
When I was reading about it, what stood out to me was how he described the on-set atmosphere of Donnie Brasco.
Yeah.
He talks about that buddy film dynamic.
Yeah.
The camaraderie with Mike Madsen, Jimmy Russo, and especially Johnny Depp.
Oh, yeah.
They formed a close bond. And he even says they brought out the certifiable side of each other.
I love that.
It speaks to the creative chemistry that can happen on set.
Absolutely. It's not just about the role itself. It's about the collaborative energy that fuels a performance.
Right. And it seems like Pacino found that spark with Donnie Brasco.
Definitely. A way to bring some freshness to a genre that could easily fall into those same old tropes.
Speaking of iconic pairings,
Yeah.
we can't forget Heat, which finally brought Pacino and Robert De Niro together on screen.
At last, the cinematic pairing everyone had been waiting for.
For years.
And in this crime, epic Pacino plays Vincent Hanna.
Yes. A detective battling his own personal demons while trying to take down this crew of high-level thieves led by De Niro's character.
The intensity is palpable. You can feel it coming off the screen.
And there's this deleted scene
Oh, really?
where we see Hannah using cocaine,
Wow.
which adds this whole other layer of understanding to his behavior.
Yeah, like it gives some context to his erratic nature.
Exactly.
Do you think cutting it was the right decision?
It's a tough call. On the one hand, it provides insight into the pressures he's facing. But on the other hand, it's more powerful to leave some things to the imagination.
It's true. Sometimes less is more.
Right. But regardless of that deleted scene, Pacino's energy is just captivating.
Oh, absolutely.
And then there's that off-screen dynamic between him and De Niro.
Right. Adds a whole other layer of intrigue to the project.
It's this complex relationship marked by respect and this shared understanding of the trials of fame.
The pressures of being in the public eye.
But there's also this undeniable element of competition between them.
Oh, yeah. It's fascinating how Pacino mentions a similar dynamic with Dustin Hoffman.
Right, they were even jokingly considering a boxing match at one point.
Can you imagine?
Pacino, De Niro, Hoffman, all in the ring.
A different era in Hollywood, for sure.
They were often labeled as New York actors.
Right, known for their intense, method-driven approach to acting.
And while they shared a certain sensibility, there was also this constant comparison.
A measuring of their achievements against each other.
Which must have been frustrating, to always be seen in relation to someone else, even when achieving incredible individual success.
Absolutely. And it makes me think about this larger theme that emerges in Pacino's memoir.
Yeah.
The tension between artistic integrity and the pressures of the industry.
It's palpable.
Yeah.
And nowhere is that tension more evident than in his reflections on Looking for Richard.
His passion project.
Where he set out to make Shakespeare more accessible to a wider audience.
An ambitious undertaking.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's fascinating how Pacino frames Looking for Richard as like this personal mission. He wanted to demystify Shakespeare, make it resonate with people who might feel intimidated by the language or the theatrical conventions,
He even talks about it being a response to criticism that he received for his portrayal of Richard III on Broadway.
Oh, wow.
Like he wanted to prove that Shakespeare could be relevant, even electrifying, for modern audiences.
I see what you mean. And he took a huge gamble with this project, directing, starring in the middle, and financing the film independently.
Yeah.
All while juggling other acting commitments.
Talk about dedication.
Right. There's this great anecdote about Michael Mann.
Oh, yeah.
The director of Heatlanding Pacino, part of his crew for Looking for Richard.
I love that story.
It really speaks volumes about Mann's respect for Pacino's vision.
And the camaraderie that exists even in this competitive industry.
For sure. But despite that support, Pacino ran into some harsh realities of independent filmmaking.
He did.
He really struggled with marketing and self-promotion.
He talks about those anxious moments during test screenings.
Oh, yeah.
Hoping that the film would magically improve on its way to the theater.
It's almost like a glimpse into his vulnerability, which is refreshing to see from someone who is often perceived as this larger-than-life figure.
Absolutely. Makes those positive reactions to the film all the more meaningful.
Right. He talks about this teacher who was moved to tears because she finally understood Shakespeare through his film.
It's powerful. Have you ever had an experience where a work of art really shifted your perspective or helped you understand something in a new way?
Absolutely. I think those moments are what make art so powerful. It's about forging connections, sparking empathy, and expanding our understanding of the world.
And ourselves.
Oh.
And for Pacino, that teacher's reaction must have been incredibly validating.
Especially considering the struggles he faced bringing Looking for Richard to life.
Yet despite those positive reactions, the film didn't achieve that widespread recognition that he hoped for.
It's almost tragic.
This labor of love,
right.
This deeply personal project,
yeah.
kind of fading into relative obscurity.
It raises a question that we've kind of touched upon.
Right.
How do artists reconcile those moments of creative triumph with the reality of commercial success?
Or the lack thereof.
Exactly. And it seems this question was particularly poignant for Pacino when it came to Shakespeare.
Because after Looking for Richard, he didn't take on another Shakespearean role for a decade.
Wow.
Until he played Shylock in The Merchant of Venice.
And that film brought its own set of challenges and complexities.
For sure.
It's a fascinating choice considering the play's controversial history.
Right.
The Merchant of Venice has been criticized as anti-Semitic.
Yeah.
But Pacino was drawn to the character of Shylock. He saw him not as a villain,
right,
but as a victim of prejudice.
Someone pushed to the margins of society.
Exactly.
And treated with cruelty.
It's interesting how he mentions that the Jewish community responded really positively to the film.
They did.
But the studio Sony Pictures seemed almost afraid of the potential backlash.
Yes.
They barely promoted it.
It feels like a missed opportunity.
Definitely. Seems like there was a disconnect between Pacino's artistic intent and the studio's commercial concerns. But Pacino's connection to Shylock didn't end there. He went on to perform the role several more times.
He did.
Both at Shakespeare in the Park and on Broadway, under the direction of Daniel Sullivan.
And Pacino highlights this incredibly powerful moment that Sullivan added to the play.
Oh, really?
Where Shylock is forced to convert to Christianity.
Okay.
They tear off his yarmulke and baptize him. But then in this quiet act of defiance, he retrieves his yarmulke and puts it back on.
Oh, wow. It's such a poignant detail.
So powerful. I read in Pacino's memoir, he talks about seeing this elderly Jewish man, clearly a Holocaust survivor,
Yeah.
in the front row during one of the Broadway performances.
Wow.
The man was weeping during the forced baptism scene. But then when Shylock puts his yarmulke back on, he stood up and applauded.
Oh, my God.
Pacino said he'd never experienced such raw emotion from an audience member before.
That story gives me chills. It's a testament to the power of art to evoke such visceral reactions.
Right, to touch on these deeply personal and historical wounds. And it speaks to Pacino's ability to convey that complexity, that blend of vulnerability and resilience.
Absolutely. And what's remarkable is that he's expressed a desire to play Shylock again.
He has.
Maybe even in England.
Wow.
It's clearly a role that deeply resonates with him, a character that continues to challenge and inspire him.
And it circles back to this enduring fascination with Shakespeare.
Right.
It's like he recognizes the timelessness of these works,
Yeah.
how they can still speak to contemporary audiences in profound ways.
Exactly. What do you think it was about Shakespeare that continued to resonate with him throughout his career, even when he faced setbacks like with Looking for Richard?
That's a great question. I think for Pacino, Shakespeare represented this kind of artistic Everest.
I see what you mean.
These plays demand so much from an actor, emotionally, intellectually, physically. And I think he was drawn to that challenge, to the opportunity to explore the full range of human experience.
Through these iconic characters.
Right? You're right. It's like he saw Shakespeare as the ultimate test of his abilities as an actor.
And even after achieving so much success in film, he kept returning to the stage.
He did.
To that raw immediacy of live performance.
It makes me think about something he said in the memoir, about actors having a unique brand of craziness.
Oh, yeah. He tells this wonderful story about watching Jonathan Pryce play Hamlet.
Yeah.
Not craziness in like a negative sense, but like a willingness to push boundaries, to delve into those depths of human emotion.
Even if it means looking a little unconventional in the process.
Exactly. And Pacino celebrates that commitment.
Yeah.
He sees it as a sign of dedication, of this unwavering passion for the craft. He even says, actors, man, there's nothing like actors back then and right now. They're the greatest of humans.
That's a beautiful sentiment. It really captures what he admires most about his fellow actors. Their courage, their vulnerability, their willingness to just lay themselves bare for the sake of storytelling.
He recognizes it takes a special kind of person to do that, to pour their heart out on stage or on screen.
Pacino has shown that drive throughout his entire career. He's never been afraid to take risks, explore the shadows of human nature, push himself as an artist.
It's inspiring, wouldn't you say? Even after all these decades in the industry, that spark is still there.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that no matter how much success you achieve, that genuine love for what you do can keep you going.
Speaking of connections, I noticed something interesting. You know how Pacino talks about working with Lily Rabe on that Broadway production of The Merchant of Venice?
Yeah.
She's Jill Clayburgh's daughter,
Oh, wow.
the actress who predicted De Niro's success back in the day.
What a full circle moment.
It really is. It speaks to the interconnectedness of the acting world, these lineages that weave through generations.
It makes you think about the impact those connections can have.
It does. Sadly, Clayburgh passed away while that production was running,
Oh, wow.
which must have been so tough for everyone involved.
Especially Pacino.
It's a reminder of life's fragility, even amidst all the glamour of Hollywood. It's true, but it also speaks to the resilience of artists, their ability to find solace and strength in their work when facing personal loss.
And that's what makes Pacino's story so compelling. He's reached this legendary status, but he's still deeply human.
He is.
We've seen how he's dealt with self-doubt, faced rejection, experienced profound loss. But through it all, his love for acting has been this constant.
Like an anchor.
Yeah. A force that propels him to keep exploring, keep growing, keep seeking out those moments of truth and beauty.
On stage and screen.
So having delved into his memoir, what would you say are some of the key takeaways from this deep dive into Al Pacino's world?
I think we've gained a much deeper understanding of his journey, with all of its ups and downs, its triumphs and disappointments.
We've seen how he's navigated the pressures of fame,
The competitiveness within the industry.
that delicate balance between artistic vision and commercial success.
And we've seen his profound love for his craft, his respect for his fellow actors, and that unwavering passion for Shakespeare.
It's inspiring.
Definitely. Most importantly, I think we're reminded that even the most iconic figures are human,
They are.
grappling with vulnerabilities and insecurities, just like the rest of us.
And that those vulnerabilities can actually be a source of strength,
They can.
pushing us to seek greater authenticity and emotional depth in our own lives.
Absolutely. Before we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought Pacino struggles with looking for Richard. They were both heartbreaking and inspiring.
They were.
It's a reminder that sometimes the most rewarding pursuits are those driven by passion and a genuine desire to create.
Regardless of the outcome.
Exactly. And I think that really encapsulates the essence of Pacino's story. He reminds us that the journey, the creative process, the act of bringing something meaningful into the world can be just as valuable as any external validation.
So as you continue to explore Al Pacino's work, I encourage you to think about that.
Hmm?
How do his experiences, particularly with Looking for Richard, speak to the challenges that artists face in balancing personal vision with commercial expectations?
It's a question worth pondering.
It is. Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the world of Al Pacino. Thank you for joining us on this insightful journey. We hope you've come away with a renewed appreciation for this remarkable actor and the enduring